Hey people, it's nice talking. Now this leads on from the videos I've done previously, specifically the black films and the Marion Stamps one. Now I came across this when I was researching Cabrini Green, and I think this is very pertinent considering that it's an election year. We're going to see more of these politicians trying to pimp out the black community. So this is from ChicagoMag.com. So let's begin. They don't live very fancy here at Cabrini. 37 years ago, Mayor Jane Byrne moved into the Cabrini Green housing project to draw attention to the violence and poverty there, become one of the most famous and factious publicity stunts in the city's history. On a Monday night on March 1981, 30 people gathered in the ground floor rec room of a Cabrini Green high-rise to hear a group called the Electric Force Band. The lead singer was a 21-year-old named Larry Potts who could sound like Frankie Lymon or Little Anthony. The group covered radio songs, mostly funk and soul, Cameo, Rick James, Con Funk Shun. As the band performed, someone passing by outside struck a .357 Magnum through an open window and fired several times. One bullet hit a 6-year-old in the right thigh, and another shot ricocheted off a wall and struck a 14-year-old girl in the leg. Both children will be okay. Larry Potts was shot through the back and died that night at a Northside hospital. The shooter, a 24-year-old named Jerry Loosby, a Cobra Stone gang member from another Cabrini Green high-rise, told the police that he mistook the singer for a rival gang member. The next morning, as Jane Byrne was getting ready for work, drinking coffee and putting on makeup, she heard on the radio news of the singer's death. Not his name or who he was. The reporter simply broadcast there'd been another killing at Cabrini Green. Byrne, elected as Chicago's mayor 2 years earlier, lived on the 43rd floor of a luxury high-rise less than a mile east of the near Northside public housing project. She could look out her window on the Gold Coast and see Cabrini Green's palisade of red and white towers. When Byrne's grandfather immigrated to Chicago from County Mayo Island in 1888, the first place he lived in was Little Hell, the Irish ghetto that was the future site of Cabrini Green. Her grandfather's older brother, who made the journey 4 years earlier, warned him to stay clear of the gangs that terrorized the neighborhood. A century later, after construction of the Cabrini row houses and 23 public housing high-rises, gangs were still causing havoc. In the first 3 months of 1981 alone, 11 people were murdered and 37 shot at Cabrini Green. Byrne decided right then, that as mayor she was obligated to do something about the violence. 11 days later, she announced that she would take up residence at the housing projects. I'll keep the Cabrini Green apartment in the way that many suburbanites keep a downtown or in-town apartment. She said, I will consider it a place to go at some nights and not on others. I will not give up the apartment so long as I am mayor. She picked as her new home what she'd heard was the most troubled of all the high-rises, the building where Larry Potts' killer lived, 1160 North Cedric Street, The Rock. When the building's manager started showing apartments to Byrne's advance team, the first vacant unit he opened had a family living in it. He used his keys on a second officially empty apartment. Unofficial occupants lived there as well. By then, the overall population of Cabrini Green had fallen from a high of somewhere around 20,000 in the 60s to 14,000. But the Chicago Housing Authority estimated another 6,000 people likely stayed there who weren't on a lease. A reporter who visited the high-rise before the arrival of the mayor's cleaning crew described the fresh urine pool in one of the two elevators, the graffiti covering the walls, disciples kill old stones, and the fear he felt in narrow corridors and stairwells. The toilets were out of order in the lobby. The screen door on the mayor's new 4th-floor apartment was punched in and lolling off its hinges. Second graders at Cabrini Green's Bird Elementary sent letters to Byrne urging her to stay away. A lot of black young people live here and you are a white person. Roaches and rats might drive you crazy. You may be shot, stabbed, or assassinated. In 1978, Byrne had married Jay McCullen, a City Hall reporter with tipping insouciance of an MC at a Dean Martin roast. When McCullen first visited the Rock, the elevator taking him to his apartment broke down, stranding him and 11 others between floors. When freed, he walked the 4 flights, the light bulbs missing in the stairwells, trash piled up around the garbage chutes at each landing. It ain't the Ritz, he told the reporters of him, but he wasn't too worried. I've slept in some pretty unusual places in my life. The couple moved in on March 31st, arriving in a limousine and hurried inside by a security detail of 16. The apartment next to Byrne was cleared so that 2 guards were stationed nearby at all times. Bulletproof glass panels were installed on the windows. President Reagan had been shot the day before in an attempted assassination. Byrne had received death threats as well. While I was mostly philosophical about such threats, Byrne wrote in a diary of her stay that was published in the Sun-Times. Jay was grimly humorous, stating, "You'll be safer in Cabrini. The place has such a bad reputation, most assassins will be afraid to go there," she added. And now it is our pleasure to take turns using a hand shower that the guards attached to the bathtub faucet. They don't let fancy here at Cabrini. Byrne was engaged in a brazen political stunt, a ploy to jumpstart declining poll numbers midway through her first term. She'd won the black vote over incumbent Michael Bilandic in the 1979 mayoral election, but once in office, she'd reduced the number of African Americans in key civic positions. She'd installed a black interim police chief, a lot like Mayor Lori Lightfoot, but given the permanent job to Richard Brzezinski, a white veteran of the force. She removed 2 of the 5 African Americans on the 11-member school board and replacing them with whites who were openly opposed to desegregation through busing. Byrne had pivoted, hoping to shore up support among whites, but the backlash was fiercer than she'd expected. In Chicago's zero-sum racial politics, each of these moves was treated as a declaration of war. Relocating to one of the country's most infamous black ghettos would demonstrate that she cared about issues affecting the African American community. And I want to just state, this is another one of these stunts, like, oh, I'm living in this. Okay, you're living there. Does that increase the standard of housing? Does that give any jobs? Does that help the education reach a better standard? Does it help any way, in any material way, to achieve anything? No, it doesn't. It's just another stunt, and we have to remember this when we see these things happen, because these things are ultimately cheap and don't cost anything. As a political theater, it was compelling stuff. The 47-year-old Byrne was a small woman, heavily rouged with a blonde bob and mouth that seemed perpetually pursed with nervousness. She was partial to mink coats, ruffles, and pastels. The local and national news ran with the story of this tough Irish woman living in the notorious housing project. She was like Kurt Russell's character in that year's Escape from New York, entering the ruins of the post-apocalyptic city, except she wore a purple suede jacket and a pink skirt. Mrs. Byrne is crossing the invisible, powerful line which has always separated the haves from have-nots, wrote the Chicago Defender. It is a stunt whose redeeming political symbolism elevates it to the lofty heights of civic and moral responsibility. To her credit, Byrne understood the practical effects the media attention would have on Cabrini Green. She occupied the seat of power, and she could bring that power with her to public housing. Whenever a mayor goes, there seems to be a city public services galore. She said once that she launched a sports initiative for the thousands of local youth, beginning construction of 3 new baseball diamonds and a football field on the site of the shuttered Cooley High School. 2 other parks received upgrades. Potholes were filled and cars towed. Workers from the city department of streets and sanitation swept gutters and picked up trash. Sod was planted, but it all died. Sewers were repaired. Plumbing and heating systems in the building received upgrades. Byrne created a new food cooperative at Cabrini Green. She sent staffers from human services into the high rises to counsel truants, work with victims of crime, and help alleviate domestic conflict. 7 area liquor stores were closed. The city cited them for a range of electrical or structural violation, and hundreds of families were evicted, some for illegally housing parolees, some suspected of gang activities. Byrne opened a new misdemeanor court at a nearby police station to hear what was expected to be a torrent of new cases. A retired Army Major General who'd commanded the Green Berets was given the position of directing all security at Cabrini Green. A special task force of 50 federal agents from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms was assigned to stop the trafficking of guns there. For the 150 Chicago police officers who participated in Sunday read of the purportedly vacant apartments at Cabrini Green, she gave each of them a white envelope with $50 inside, money from her political fund, instructing them to treat their wives or girlfriends to a nice meal. Byrne also awarded $800 to 6 officers who solved a Cabrini Green murder. Police crowded the streets. Firemen and paramedics entered the towers without fear. More work went on at the housing project in 2 weeks than had occurred in the previous 2 years. Byrne's Cabrini sojourn led to every newscast. Slightly different installments appeared in the morning and late edition newspapers. Sun-Times ran daily opinion polls. Will Mayor Byrne's Cabrini Green move make a difference? If you were the mayor, would you move into Cabrini Green? The city council passed a resolution praising her decision to take an apartment there, and other city politicians announced their own intentions to stay in public housing. When New York City Mayor Ed Koch was asked if he too would consider a similar move, he said he'd grown up poor and had no desire to go back. All right, I'm running out of capacity right now, so I'm going to stop it, then I'll continue it in part 2. So anyway, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. I'll leave this article in the description of this one, and you can check it out on the next video. Peace.